Part 3, Chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Charles Rex by Ethel M. Dell. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. 1. The Virtuous Hero. "How long is this absurd farce to go on?" said Larpent. "Aren't you enjoying yourself?" grinned Saltash. Larpent looked sardonic. Saltash took up the whiskey decanter. "My worthy buccaneer, you don't know when you're lucky. If I had a reputation like yours—" He broke off, still grinning. "Well, it's no use crying over spilt milk, is it? Let's spill some whiskey instead. Say when." Larpent watched him, frowning. "Thanks. That's enough. I should like an answer to my question, if you've no objection. How long is this practical joke going to last?" Saltash turned and looked upon him with a calculating eye. "I really don't know what's troubling you," he remarked. "You've got everything in your favor. I'd change places with you with all the pleasure in the world if circumstances permitted." "That isn't the point, is it?" said Larpent. "No? What is the point?" Saltash turned again to the whiskey decanter. "Well, you've got me into a damn hole, and I want to know how you're going to get me out again." Larpent's voice was gruff and surly. He stared into his tumbler without drinking. Saltash chuckled to himself with mischievous amusement. "My dear chap, I can't get you out. That's just it. I want you to stay there." Larpent muttered deeply and inarticulately and began to drink. Saltash turned round, glass in hand, and sat down on the edge of the high cushioned fender. "I really don't think you are greatly to be pitied," he remarked lightly. "The child will soon be married and off your hands." "Oh, that's the idea, is it?" said Larpent. "Who's going to marry her? Young Bryan?" "Don't you approve?" said Saltash. "I don't think it'll come off," said Larpent with decision. "Why not?" An odd light flickered in the younger man's eyes for an instant. "Are you going to refuse your consent?" "I?" Larpent shrugged his shoulders. "Are you going to give yours?" Saltash made an elaborate gesture. "I shall bestow my blessing with both hands." Larpent looked at him fixedly for a few seconds. "You're a very wonderful man, my lord," he remarked dryly at length. Saltash laughed. "Have you only just discovered that?" Larpent drained his tumbler gravely and put it down. "All the same, I don't believe it will come off," he said. Saltash moved impatiently. "You always were an unbeliever. But anyone can see they were made for each other. Of course it will come off." "You want it to come off?" asked Larpent. "It is my intention that it shall," said Saltash royally. "You're playing Providence in the girl's interest. Is that it?" Again Larpent's eyes, shrewd and far seeing, were fixed upon him. They held a glint of humour. "It's a tricky job, my lord. You'll wish you hadn't before you've done." "Think so?" said Saltash. "If you haven't begun to already," said Larpent. Saltash looked down at him with a comical twist of the eyebrows. "You're very analytical to night. What's the matter?" "Nothing," said Larpent bluntly, "except that you're making a mistake." "Indeed!" For a moment Saltash's look was haughty. Then he began to smile again. "I see you're burning to give your advice," he said tolerantly. "Fire away, if it does you any good." Larpent's eyes, very steady under their fair bushy brows, were still unwaveringly upon him. "No, I don't presume to give you advice," he said. "But I'll tell you something which you may or may not know. That young woman you have so kindly bestowed upon me as a daughter worships the ground you tread on; and, that being the case, she isn't very likely to make a dazzling success of it if she marries young Bernard Bryan." He ceased to speak, and simultaneously Saltash jerked himself to his feet with a short French oath that sounded like the snarl of an angry animal. He went across to the windows that were thrown wide to the summer night, and stood before one of them, with his head flung back in the attitude of one who challenges the universe. Larpent lay back in his chair with the air of a man who has said his say. He did not even glance towards his companion, and there followed a considerable pause before either of them spoke again. Abruptly at length Saltash wheeled. "Larpent!" There was something of a whiplash quality about his voice. It seemed to cut the silence. "Why the devil do you tell me this? Can't you see that it's the very thing I'm guarding against? Young Bunny is the best remedy she could take for a disease of that kind. And after all, she's only a child." "Do you say that for your own benefit or for mine?" said Larpent, without turning his head. "What do you mean?" Savagely Saltash flung the question, but the man in the chair remained unmoved. "You know quite well what I mean," he said. "You know that it isn't true." "What isn't true?" Saltash came swiftly back across the room, moving as if goaded. He took his tumbler from the mantelpiece and drank the contents almost at a gulp. "Go on," he said, with his back to Larpent. "May as well finish now you've begun. What isn't true?" Larpent lounged in his chair and watched him, absolutely unmoved. "When a thing is actually in existence, an accomplished fact, it's rather futile to talk of guarding against it," he said in his brief, unsympathetic voice. "You've been extraordinarily generous to the imp, and it isn't surprising that she should be extraordinarily grateful. She wouldn't be human if she weren't. But when it comes to handing her on to another fellow, well, she may consent, but it won't be because she wants to, but because it's the only thing left. She knows well enough by this time that what she really wants is out of her reach." Again Saltash made a fierce movement, but he did not turn or speak. Larpent took out his pipe and began to fill it. "You've been too good a friend to her," he went on somewhat grimly, "and you're not made of the right stuff for that sort of thing. I'm sorry for the kid, because she's a bit of a pagan, too, and it's hard to have to embrace respectability whether you want to or not." "Oh, damn!" Saltash exclaimed suddenly and violently. "What more could any man have done? What the devil are you driving at?" He turned upon Larpent almost menacingly, and found the steady eyes, still with that icy glint of humour in them, unflinchingly awaiting his challenge. "You want to get married," the sailor said imperturbably. "Why in the name of all the stars of destiny don't you marry her? She may not have the blue blood in her veins, but blood isn't everything, and you've got enough for two. And it's my opinion you'd find her considerably easier to please than some, less strict in her views, too, which is always an advantage to a man of your varying moods." Saltash's laugh had a curious jarring sound as of something broken. "Oh, you think that would be a suitable arrangement, do you? And how long do you think I should stick to her? How long would it be before she ran away?" "I never speculate so far as you are concerned," said Larpent, shaking the tobacco back into his pouch with care. "You think it wouldn't matter, perhaps," gibed Saltash. "My royal house is so inured to scandal that no one would expect anything else." "I don't think she is the sort to run away," said Larpent quietly. "And I'm pretty sure of one thing. You could hold her if you tried." "An ideal arrangement," sneered Saltash. "And I should then settle down to a godly, righteous, and sober life, I suppose. Is that the idea?" "You said it," observed Larpent, pushing his pipe into his mouth. Saltash lodged one foot on the high fender and stared at it. The sneer died out of his face, and the old look, half mischievous, half melancholy, took its place. "I haven't seriously contemplated marriage for 8 years," he said, his mouth twitching a little as with a smile suppressed. "Not since the day I tried to steal Maud Bryan away from Jake, and failed rather signally. I don't think I've ever done anything quite so low down since." Larpent lighted his pipe with grave attention. "A good thing for you both that you did fail," he observed. "Think so?" Saltash glanced at him. "Why?" "She isn't the woman for you." Larpent spoke with the absolute conviction of one who knows. "She has too many ideals. Now this sprat you caught at Valrosa has none." "Not so sure of that," said Saltash. "Well, no illusions, anyway." There was a hint of compassion in Larpent's voice. "It wasn't because she trusted you that she put herself under your protection. She didn't trust you. She simply chucked herself at you with her eyes open. Like Jonah's whale, you were the only shelter within reach. I'd wager a substantial sum that she's never had any illusions about you. But if you held up your little finger she'd come to you. She's your property, and it isn't in her to do anything else, let her down as often as you will." Saltash made an excruciating grimace. "My good fellow, spare me. That's just where the shoe pinches. I've broken faith with her already. But damnation, what else could I do? I didn't choose the part of virtuous hero, it was thrust upon me. The gods are making sport of me. I am lost in a labyrinth of virtue and horribly, most horribly sick of it. I nearly broke through once, but the wreck pulled me up, and when I recovered from that I was more hopelessly lost than before." "So you are not enjoying it either," remarked Larpent, with the glimmer of a smile. "But you don't seem to have let her down very far." Saltash brought his foot down with a bang. "I swore I'd keep her with me. I meant—oh, God knows what I meant to do. I didn't do it, anyway. I broke my oath, and I made her go, and she never uttered a word of reproach, not one word. Do you think I'll let her ruin herself by marrying me after that? Like Jonah's whale, I've managed to throw her up on to dry land, and if she gets swamped again, it won't be my fault." He began to laugh again, suddenly and cynically, the bitter laugh of a man who hides his soul, and Larpent leaned back in his chair again, as if he recognized that the discussion was over. "I don't suppose any one will blame you for it," he said. "No one will have the chance," said Saltash. 2. The Compact. The polo ground at Fair Harbor was reckoned as one of the greatest attractions the town possessed. Because of it, and the Greydown racecourse, an ever-increasing stream of visitors poured yearly into the town and its neighbourhood, and very fashionable crowds were wont to gather during the summer season at the various hotels which had sprung up during recent years for their accommodation. The old Anchor Hotel facing the shore had been bought by a syndicate and rebuilt, and was now a very modern erection indeed. It boasted a large lounge, palm-decked and glass-covered, in which a string band played for several hours of the day, and the constant swing of its doors testified to the great popularity to which it had attained since its renovation. To Bunny, who had known the place under very different circumstances in his boyhood, it was always a source of amusement to drop in and mark progress. The polo ground was only a few yards away, and he had become an ardent member of the club, to which he almost invariably devoted 2 afternoons of the week. He was a promising player, and his keenness made him a favourite. He rode Lord Saltash's ponies, Saltash himself very seldom putting in an appearance. He was wont to declare that he had no time for games, and his frequent absences made it impossible for him to take a very active part in the proceedings of the club, which he had himself inaugurated in an idle hour. He dropped in occasionally to watch a game, and he took interest in Bunny's progress; but he was very rarely moved to play himself. He was too restless, too volatile, to maintain any lasting enthusiasm for any pastime. All that was generally seen of him when staying at Birchester was a lightning glimpse as he tore by in his car, or else galloped furiously over the downs and along the hard sands in the early morning. He was a good deal in town as a rule during the season, but with the general exodus in July he was invariably the first to go, driven by a fever that gave him no rest. Even his most intimate friends seldom knew where he was to be found, or whither his wild fancy would take him next. No one was sure of him at any time. He would accept an engagement and throw it up again without scruple if it did not accord with his mood. Yet wherever he went he could always command a welcome, at least from the feminine portion of the community, who declared that Charles Rex could not be judged by ordinary standards. He was a law unto himself. Even Bunny did not know where he was on that hot afternoon in mid-July, when all Fair Harbor gathered to watch a match between the regular team and the visitors. It bid fair to be an exciting event, and he was in high spirits at being one of those chosen to play. Maud had promised to bring Toby down to see the game at his special request. He had seen very little of Toby since that night at the castle, though he was forced to admit to himself that, if she avoided him of set purpose, she did it in a fashion that baffled detection. She seemed to have settled down as a regular inmate of Jake's household, and with the exception of her early rides with Jake she gave herself up almost exclusively to helping Maud with the children. She had eased his sister's burden in a wonderful fashion, and the children loved her dearly. Her readiness and her sweet temper never seemed to fail. She was but a child herself, but Bunny had an uneasy feeling that she was changing. She had stipulated for 6 months, but he sometimes wondered if by the end of that time she would not have contrived to put herself out of his reach. It was that suspicion that kept him hotly determined to pursue her untiringly till he captured her. Even at a distance, that odd charm of hers lured him strongly, and he knew instinctively that if once she were launched in society his chances of victory would be very greatly reduced. He wished he could have seen more of Captain Larpent and possibly have enlisted his sympathy, but he had left the castle with Saltash, and even Toby herself professed ignorance of his whereabouts. It was evident that they had never seen much of one another, and Bunny realized that he would look in vain for help in that quarter. He doggedly maintained his resolve to win her none the less, and his visits to his sister's house were frequent. He spoke no word on the subject either to Maud or Jake. Toby should not feel that he had in any sense taken a mean advantage. But he never looked at her without the quick longing to take her in his arms rising in his heart, and though the longing was never satisfied he believed that she was aware of it. She was always friendly with him and never embarrassed in his presence. Yet he had a strong feeling that by some subtle means she was holding him off. He bided his time with what patience he could muster, but he was determined it should not be for long. The work on Saltash's estate had done him good. He was keen to prove himself, and the vigorous outdoor life suited him. Jake saw with satisfaction that he was developing a self-reliance and resourcefulness that had not characterized him formerly. He had given up racing according to his promise, and the life he now led was after Jake's own heart, an existence of wholesome activity that was making of him exactly the type of man that he desired him to become. The boy was a gentleman, and there was fine stuff in him. Jake gloried in the fact. There had always been in Bunny qualities that appealed to him very strongly, and it was in a large measure due to his influence that those qualities had ripened as they had. He did not accompany Maud and Toby down to Fair Harbor, for business kept him at the stables. "Bring him back with you," he said to his wife at parting, and she smiled and promised. Bunny was never difficult to persuade. But when they reached the polo ground he was in the midst of a crowd of visitors from the hotel, and it seemed at first as if he would have no time to spare for them. He very speedily detached himself, however, at sight of them, and came up with an eager greeting. "So awfully glad you've come. There are some people here you used to know, Maud, in the old days. Friends of Charlie's, too. The Melroses, you remember them, don't you?" The name came upon Maud with a curious shock. Yes, she remembered the Melroses. They belonged to the long, long ago before her marriage, to that strange epoch in her early girlhood when Charlie Burchester had filled her world. How far away it seemed! They had all been in the same set, they and the Cressidys, who had been responsible for the scandal that had so wrung her proud heart. Lady Cressidy had been dead for years. She wondered if Charlie had ever regretted her. It had been a passing fancy, and she suspected that he had forgotten her long since. He had never really taken her seriously, of that she was convinced now. Life had been merely a game with him in those days. It was only recently that it had begun to be anything else. She felt no keen desire to resume the long-forgotten acquaintance with the Melroses, but Bunny evidently expected it of her, had already told them about her, and she had no choice. She followed him, therefore, Toby very sedate and upright behind her. Toby was looking wonderfully pretty that day. She varied as the landscape varies on a windy day, but that afternoon she was at her best. Her blue eyes looked forth upon the crowd with a hint of audacity, and her piquant little face was full of charm. Bunny's look dwelt upon her as he drew aside for his sister to pass him at the pavilion. He pinched her elbow with a sudden smile. "You don't want to go and talk to those people. Come with me and see the ponies." She responded with characteristic eagerness to the invitation. "Shall I? But won't Maud mind? Do you think I ought?" "Of course you ought," he rejoined with decision. "Maud won't care. I'll bring you back to her before the play begins." He drew her away through the crowd, and she went with him without further demur. Bunny was tall and bore himself with distinction. There was, moreover, something rather compelling about him just then, and Toby felt the attraction. She suffered the hand that grasped her own. "Look here," he said abruptly as they drew apart from the throng, "I've got to see more of you somehow. Have you been dodging me all this time?" "I?" said Toby. She met his eyes with a funny little chuckle. There was spontaneous mischief in his own. He gave her hand an admonitory squeeze. "I'm not laughing. You're not playing the game. What's the good of my coming to the house to see you if we never meet?" "Don't understand," said Toby briefly. Yes, you do. Or you can if you try. You never seem to have any liberty nowadays. Is it Maud's doing or your own?" Toby laughed again, lightly and bafflingly. "I can do anything I want to do," she said. "Oh, can you?" Bunny pounced. "Then you've got to meet me sometimes, away from the rest. See? Come, that's only fair." Toby made a face at him. "Suppose I don't want to?" she said. He laughed into her eyes. "Don't tell me that. When and where?" She laughed back. He was hard to resist. "I don't know. I'm too busy." "Rot," said Bunny. "You're very rude," she remarked. "I'll be ruder when I get the chance," he laughed. "Listen, I want to see you alone very badly. You're not going to let me down?" "I don't know what I'm going to do yet," said Toby. But she could not look with severity into the handsome young face that was bent to hers. It was not in her to repulse a friendly influence. She had to respond. "I'll tell you what you're going to do," said Bunny, marking her weakening with cheery assurance. "You'll take Chops for a walk to morrow evening through the Birchester woods. You know that gate by the larch copse? It's barely a mile across the down. Be there at 7, and perhaps, who knows, perhaps Chops may meet somebody he's rather fond of." "And again perhaps he mayn't," said Toby, suppressing a dimple. "Oh, I say, that's shabby. You'll give him the chance, anyhow." The pleading note sounded in Bunny's voice. Toby suddenly dropped her eyes. She looked as if she were bracing herself to refuse. Bunny saw and quickly grappled with the danger. "Give him the chance," he urged softly into her ear. "You won't be sorry afterwards." She did not lift her eyes, but somehow the enchantment held. By a bold stroke he had entered her defences, and she could not for the moment drive him out. She was silent. "You'll come?" whispered Bunny. They were nearing a little group of ponies that were being held in readiness at the end of the field. Toby quickened her pace. He kept beside her, but he did not speak again. And perhaps his silence moved her more than speech, for she gave a little impulsive turn towards him and threw him her sudden boyish smile. "All right. We'll come," she said. "Hooray!" crowed Bunny softly. "But I shan't stay long," she warned him, "and if I don't like it I shall never come again." "You will like it," said Bunny with confidence. "I wonder," said Toby, with her chin in the air. 3. L'Oiseau Bleu. Bunny surpassed himself that afternoon. Wherever he went success seemed to follow, and shouts of applause reached him from all quarters. "That young fellow is a positive genius," commented General Melrose, who had a keen eye for the game. "He ought to be in the service. Why isn't he, Mrs. Bolton?" "He wasn't considered strong enough," Maud said. "It was a great disappointment to him. You see, he spent the whole of his childhood on his back with spine trouble, and when that was put right he outgrew his strength." "Ah, I remember now. You used to wheel the poor little beggar about in a long chair. Well, he's rather different now from what he was in those days. Not much the matter with him, is there?" "Nothing now," Maud said. "What does he do with himself?" asked the General, surveying the distant figure at that moment galloping in a far corner of the field. "He is agent on Lord Saltash's estate at Birchester," his daughter said, suddenly entering the conversation. "He was telling me about it at luncheon. He and Lord Saltash are friends." "Ah, to be sure." General Melrose's look suddenly came to Maud, and she felt herself colour a little. "He is an old friend of the family," she said. "We live not far from the castle. My husband owns the Greydown stables." "Oh, I know that," the General said courteously. "I know your husband, Mrs. Bolton, and I am proud to know him. What I did not know until to day was that he was your husband. I never heard of your marriage." "We have been married for 8 years," she said with a smile. "It must be at least 10 since I saw you last," he said. "This girl of mine, Sheila, must have been at school in those days. You never met her?" Maud turned to the girl. "I don't think we have ever met before," she said. "Is this your first visit to Fair Harbour?" "My first visit, yes." Sheila leaned forward. She was a pretty girl of 22, with a quantity of soft dark hair and grey eyes that held a friendly smile. "We don't go to the sea much in the summer as a rule. We get so much of it in the winter. Dad always winters in the south. It only seems a few weeks since we came back from Valrosa." Maud was conscious of an abrupt jerk from Toby on her other side, and she laid a hand on her arm with the kindly intention of drawing her into the conversation. But the next instant, feeling tension under her hand, she turned to look at her, and was surprised to see that Toby was staring out across the field with wide, strained eyes. She looked so white that Maud had a moment of sharp anxiety. "Is anything the matter, dear?" she whispered. An odd little tremor went through Toby. She spoke with an effort. "I thought he was off his pony that time. Didn't you?" She kept her eyes upon Bunny, who was coming back, triumphant. Maud smiled. "Oh, I don't think there is much danger of that. Miss Melrose was talking about Valrosa. You were there too last winter, weren't you?" The colour mounted in Toby's face. She turned almost defiantly. "Just for a day or two. I was at school at Geneva. I went there to join my father." "I was at school at Geneva a few years ago," said Sheila Melrose. "You didn't go to Mademoiselle Denise, I suppose?" "No," said Toby briefly. "Madame Beaumonde." "I never heard of her," said Sheila. "It must have been after I left." Toby nodded. "I wasn't there long. I've never been anywhere long. But I've left school now, and I'm going to do as I like." "A very wise resolution," commented a laughing voice behind her. "It's one of the guiding principles of my life." All the party turned, Toby with a quick exclamation muffled at birth. Saltash, attired in a white yachting suit and looking more than usually distinguished in his own fantastic fashion, stood with his hand on the back of Toby's chair. "Quite a gathering of old friends," he declared, smiling impartially upon all. General Melrose stretched a welcoming hand to him. "Hullo, Saltash! Where on earth have you sprung from? Or are you fallen straight out of the skies?" "Like Lucifer, son of the morning," laughed Saltash. "Well, I haven't sprung and I haven't fallen. I have simply arrived." Toby was on her feet. "Come and sit down," she said in a low voice. He shook his head. "No, no, ma chérie. I will stand behind you. Miss Melrose, my humble regards to you. Is the black mark still against my name?" Sheila looked at him with a touch of hauteur that somehow melted into a smile. She had learnt her lesson at Valrosa, and there was nothing to add thereto. This man was never in earnest, and he had never intended her to think him so. "I banned you as bold and bad long ago," she said. "I don't remember that you have done anything to change that impression." He laughed lightly, enigmatically. "Nothing in your presence, I fear. The fates have always been sportive so far as I was concerned. But really, I'm not such a bad sort nowadays, am I, Mrs. Bolton?" Maud smiled upon him. "Not so bad, I think. But please don't ask me to be your sponsor. I really couldn't play the part." "Ask me," said Toby suddenly, with flushed face upraised. "He saved my life when the Night Moth went down, when most men would only have bothered to save their own." "What a libel!" laughed Saltash. "Don't you know I only hung on to you because you had a life belt on?" "Oh, naturally," said the General. "That would be your motive. I was sorry to hear about the Night Moth, but you had a lucky escape." "I always escape somehow," remarked Saltash complacently. "The Night Moth wanted new engines, too, that's one consolation. I've just bought another," he added, suddenly touching Toby's shoulder. "Your daddy is quite pleased with her. We've just come round from London in her." "Oh, have you?" Eagerly Toby's eyes came up to his. "What is she like? What are you going to call her?" "She isn't christened yet. I'm going to hold a reception on board, and Maud shall perform the ceremony. I'm calling her the Blue Moon, unless you can suggest something better." Saltash's restless look went to Maud. "I wanted to call her after you," he said lightly, "but I was afraid Jake might object." "I think the Blue Moon is much more suitable," she answered. "Is she as rare as she sounds?" "She's rather a fine article," he made answer. "You must come and see her. Come and cruise in her, if you will. She's only just off the slips. I was lucky to get her. She skims along like a bird." "Why not call her the Bluebird?" suggested Sheila. He shook his head with his odd grimace. "That is a thing I can never hope to possess, Miss Melrose. The blue moon may occur once in my life, if I am exceptionally virtuous, but the Bluebird, never. I have ceased to hope for it." His glance flashed beyond her. "Young Bunny is distinguishing himself to day. That was a fine effort." Every one was clapping except Toby, who was staring before her with her hands in her lap. Her blue eyes were very wide open, but they did not seem to be watching the game. "It will fly to you, chérie," suddenly whispered a voice in her ear. "It is already upon the wing." A little tremor went through her, but she did not turn her head. Only after a moment she slipped a hand behind her through the back of her chair. Wiry fingers closed upon it, gripped it, let it go. "When it comes to you, hold it fast," came the rapid whisper. "Il ne vient pas deux fois, l'oiseau bleu." Toby's lip trembled. She bit it desperately. Her look was strained. She did not attempt to speak. "It is the gift of the gods, chérie." The words came softly at her shoulder, but they pierced her. "We do not cast their gifts away. They come too seldom." She made a quick movement. It was almost convulsive, like the start of one suddenly awakened. A hard breath went through her, and then she was laughing and clapping with the rest, her eyes upon the boyish, triumphant figure in front of her. When the applause died away, Saltash had departed, abruptly, as was his wont; and though they saw him in the distance several times, he did not return that afternoon. Chapters 1, 2, and 3.